Good evening, everyone. We are beginning the brand management webinar, the second one and last one. We are going to be covering the remainder of the work. I will briefly go over the topics that we covered through the assignment, just covering the work that you may still need to study over the exam session as well. So hopefully by now, all of you have downloaded your student paper. This is what it looks like. It's a breakdown of all of the outcomes per each section. I just see a message here. Someone says that there's no sound. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, so some of you can hear me and some of you can't, which is a little bit strange. I'm getting like a 50-50 of people who can hear and people who can't hear. So I think I'm going to try talking a little bit louder and see if that makes a difference. Okay, great. So it seems like we're getting better. So, as I was saying, hopefully by now everyone has downloaded their student paper. This is the breakdown of all of the outcomes that you'll need to be studying for the exam session. So it does cover some of the things that you guys looked at in your assignment, and it has a few extra bits for the rest of the syllabus. So if you have a look, for study unit 1, which is on the front page of your paper, you will see that it gives you the chapter that is linked to the study unit, and underneath study unit 1, it relates to chapter 1 of the study unit. And chapter 1 has 5 specific outcomes that you need to be studying. So the way that the paper is designed, it works in correlation with your learner guide, and it's showing you the key focus areas that you should be working on as you go through your studies. So I'm going to quickly go through what the outcomes were for study units 1 to 4 or chapters 1 to 4 in your textbook. And this is kind of what you covered in your assignment, but just because it was in the assignment doesn't mean that it won't come up again in the exam. So the first learning outcomes for chapter 1, things that you should make sure that you are able to do after you finish studying the work, is firstly define what branding is all about, and this is covered in pages 30 and 34 of your textbook. So your student paper is also giving you that breakdown. Then you need to be able to understand why brands have become so important in today's marketing environment. Explain how branding applies to virtually everything. And there was a section that was covered in your textbook as well as in your learner guide that discusses how literally everything can be branded in today's marketing environment. The fourth outcome was to be able to describe the main challenges and opportunities that are facing marketers in today's current environment. And again, this was addressed in both the textbook as well as in your learner guide. And finally, your last outcome for chapter 1 is identify the steps in the strategic brand management process. Now, looking at these outcomes, you should then be able to go to the end of study unit 1 in your learner guide, and you should be able to answer the self-assessment exercises. So there's a few questions at the end of each of the chapters, and that will just help you to know whether you have got a thorough understanding of the work or what things you need to address in a little bit more detail. Now, if you go over to the second page of your paper, you will see that for study unit 2, this relates to chapter 2 in your textbook. And here again, you have 5 specific outcomes. The 5 focus areas. The first one being outline the sources and outcomes of customer-based brand equity. So remember, when we talk about sources and outcomes, your sources are the places where you will gather or gain your equity from, and then your outcomes would be the end result of that equity development process. Your second outcome is to identify and establish brand positioning. Your third outcome, describe the guidelines in developing a good brand positioning. Then explain your brand mantra and how it should be developed, as well as explain the advantages of having a strong brand. So at the end of this chapter in your learner guide, once again, you have self-assessment questions, which you should be working through to test your knowledge. And also, importantly, to test your application ability. You will notice that almost all of your self-assessment questions involve application in a real-life branding context. And this is just to prepare you for the application component that's going to be part of your exam. For study unit 3, you are then looking at chapter 3 in your textbook. And here you will be required to describe the 4 steps in building brand resonance. And if you remember, if you did join us for the webinar based on your assignment, we looked at how your customer-based brand equity model is related to the steps in building brand resonance. And if you have a look in your textbook, I'm just going to quickly get the page number. For you, there is a model that is incorporating your customer-based brand equity together with the steps that you would use to build resonance. It is on page 108, and it looks like this. You have your customer-based brand equity model in the middle, and then on the side of it, you have the steps that you would go through in building brand resonance. And the relationship between these two models is actually discussed as we move through the other sections as well. So it provides a good foundation for you in the remainder of the chapters that you're going to be following. Then the next outcome for chapter 3 in particular is to identify and explain the various stages in the brand value chain. Now, in your assignment, you had to apply this quite intensively. It was a high mark allocation question, and this means that you are unlikely to get it in such an intense format again in the exam, although it doesn't mean that you won't be questioned on it in the exam at all. It could still come up as a small mark allocation question, but it's unlikely that it would be as intensive application as it was in the assignment. And then your final outcome for chapter 3 would be to contrast brand equity and customer equity, and just knowing what the difference is between those two concepts. Then for study unit 4, we are going to be looking at chapter 4 in your textbook, and there were only 3 outcomes relating to chapter 4. The first one was applying the criteria for choosing brand elements, and this again you did apply in your assignment. The second one was to describe the key tactics in choosing different brand elements. And this was again sort of what you covered in your assignment when we were looking at the different brand elements of Nokia. And the final one was to highlight some of the legal issues surrounding your brand elements. And the main focus there was actually on protecting your brand elements, trademarking, and that type of thing. So those are the 4 study units that we covered in the previous webinar, and those are the key focus areas. So if you weren't fortunate enough to join us for that webinar, those are the things that you need to be going over again and addressing, just to make sure that you've covered all of that content thoroughly. Because as I said earlier, just because it's been discussed in the assignment doesn't mean that it's not going to appear again in your exam. And using that as our starting point for the fresh information that we're going to be covering for the rest of our webinar, we're going to start with study unit 5, which relates to chapter 6 in your textbook. So you'll notice now we went through study unit 1, 2, 3, and 4, correlated directly to chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4 in your textbook. But now we're going to start skipping through the chapters a little bit. So, study unit 5 is chapter 6, and your key focus of chapter 6 is integrated marketing communications and how we can use those to build brand equity. If any of you have already done the marketing communication module, that's fantastic. This study unit is going to be a breeze for you. If you haven't done it yet, then this study unit will actually be a nice introduction to what you will be studying when you get to that study, when you get to that section. So we can start with our slides now. Starting with, as I said, it's study unit 5, but it is chapter 6 in your textbook. Our starting point is just looking at what are marketing communications and what role do they play within business and within branding. So our marketing communications are defined as the means by which firms attempt to inform, persuade, and remind customers, either directly or indirectly, about the brands that they sell. Now, when we talk about inform, persuade, or remind, you will remember from Marketing 1 that those are your 3 main marketing objectives. Whenever you are communicating with your customers, you are either informing them that your brand exists and building, as we term it, brand awareness and salience, or you are persuading them to purchase your brand, where you are explaining to them brand meaning and hoping to establish a brand response. Whenever we talk about a brand response, we mean that we want our customers to go out and purchase our product. And then finally, your third objective is often to remind your customers. And this is normally when you are trying to build that relationship at the peak of your customer-based brand equity pyramid, where you are trying to establish brand loyalty, or as we term it in the customer-based brand equity pyramid, resonance. So those are key functions of marketing communication. We are always trying to inform, persuade, and remind our target market about our brand. There are 4 key points that sort of summarize what we are going to be addressing. The first one is that marketing communications are the way that a brand builds a relationship with the customer. An integrated marketing communications campaign is a mix of different brand elements or marketing communication elements, and you are going to choose those elements based on how each of them is going to contribute to your overall program, hoping to achieve, as we term it in business management, synergy, meaning that we would hope that each element performs better when mixed with the other elements than what it would perform if it were to be operating on its own. The third point is that marketers need to think beyond our traditional advertising and promotion strategies. We are living in an era of social media and easy to come by digital communications, and we need to be aware of how those are going to impact us in our marketing communications and in our brand building. And finally, consistency is the key to brand awareness and building strong brand associations. If you are continuously presenting your brand in the same way to your customer, every time they are exposed to that consistent message, their memory node, as we refer to it, becomes more prominent. And it just makes the brand stand out more and become more relevant to the customer. So your first outcome is to describe some of the changes in the new media environment. So our starting point is looking at what new media do we have available to us as marketers that we can use to our advantage. So traditional advertising media, such as TV, radio, magazines, and newspaper, are losing their grip on consumers. So this doesn't mean that they are no longer useful or valid to us. What it does mean, though, is we have other options available to our customers to communicate with them. And we need to incorporate these options and make use of them. We don't want to be communicating through channels that our target market is not being exposed to. Your textbook gives us a little bit of an outdated statistic. It says to us that marketers pour $18 billion into internet advertising, and that was in 2005. And while web advertising jumped 20% in that same time frame, the spending for TV ads remained the same. So although the stats might be a little bit outdated, they're still relevant in terms of the fact that we are using more and more internet advertising and online and digital advertising media, but we haven't stopped using TV advertising, radio, and print. It's not like we've chosen one instead of the other. Rather, we are adding elements to improve our overall marketing communications. There are numerous communication options that us as marketers can use to stay in touch with our customers. And ultimately, as we know from our CBD pyramid, moving them up to the top of that pyramid where we build resonance and relationships with them. Different media can build brand equity by firstly affecting brand awareness. Remember, brand awareness is a function of being exposed to the brand. So if you see my brand on a billboard and on TV and hear it on the radio via traditional media, but you are then exposed through additional media like Facebook or YouTube or web advertising, then that means that there will be increased number of exposures and that will lead to increased brand. The second way that this new media is going to be able to create brand equity is by creating, reinforcing, and strengthening the favorable and unique brand associations that we are developing. So if we look at those three terms, create, reinforce, strengthen, we're going to use this new media to enhance the communication that we are currently giving with our traditional media. So it's not necessarily replacing, it's just there to help and assist in creating brand equity. The third aspect of using this new media is that we are going to hopefully use it to elicit more positive brand judgment and feeling. So remember, at the judgment and feeling level, we are looking at how customers perceive our brand basically. And by using the new media available to us, for example, social media, we're able to make our communications more personalized, and we're able to just enhance the ability of customers to really understand what our brand is about, whether it be through video ads or different types of social media content, or through what works very well for us in marketing, word of mouth, where somebody on your social media feed actually uses a product and comments about how they enjoy using the brand. And lastly, we are going to use this new media to help us build our brand resonance. And remember, resonance is that relationship. And the more ways that we can communicate with our customer, the stronger the relationship is going to become. And again, using this new media just gives us additional channels. So it means that we stay in constant communication with our customers now. So your marketing communication campaign should have the right mix of options. We're not saying throw in all the new types of media that exist. We're not saying keep all the traditional types of media. We're saying that you need to mix and match the elements that are going to be best suited for you to achieve your objectives with the resources you have available and satisfying the needs of your customer. The new media environment makes it quite difficult for us as marketers to create effective advertising and communication campaigns, simply because of the additional complexity. The more options you have, the more difficult it is to find this specific mix. And because we have all of these additional communication channels, we have what we might refer to as fragmentation. And fragmentation is when your big market gets split up into smaller sections and a whole bunch of little segments of the market. And if you think about sports, for example, if you, a few years ago, if you're watching sports, it would either be on SABC 1, 2, or 3 or on Mnet. Those were the only options that you really had. So if you wanted to advertise to someone who was watching a particular sport, it would be quite easy for you to track down that customer. They would have been watching a specific channel at a specific time. Now, if you think about the vast variety of media channels you have available, there's a host of different sports channels on DSTV, as well as SABC 1, 2, and 3, and we have ETV, and then we still have people who might be watching via live streaming, who might be PVRing it and watching it later. And what that means to us is, as a marketer, it's no longer that easy for me to pinpoint where my customer is sitting and watching their sport. They could be watching in a variety of different ways, and it makes it a little bit more tricky for me to pinpoint the correct medium to use to find my customer. So we have a simple test for our marketing communication campaign. How do I know if it's been effective or not? Basically, we have a starting point, which you will see here as current brand knowledge. I will test my customers. What do they currently know about my brand? What are their judgments, their feelings, their perceptions, their expectations? And then I will set a goal, which will be my desired brand knowledge. What would I like them to know, think, and feel about my brand? And in order for me to get my customer from their current position to the desired position, we have something called the information processing model. Now, although this concept comes up a little bit later in your textbook and in your learner guide, it impacts on this process. So I've included it here so that you can just understand, how do I move my customer from the current position to the desired one? And basically I'm going to do that through, firstly, exposing them to my brand, building that salience. Then I'm going to get their attention, and hopefully they will comprehend what I am saying or what I'm telling them about my brand. This would then move us to the second level when we are building brand equity, where we have established awareness or salience, and we are now at comprehension, establishing meaning. Once customers understand what my brand is about, I can then move on to yielding. Now, yielding is a slightly complicated term that basically means getting a positive response. And as we look at our customer-based brand equity model, that is taking us up to the third level, where we are getting responses from the customer, a likelihood to purchase the product, which then leads to the intention to buy. And hopefully, all of those intentions to buy will lead to positive consumer behavior, where they will go out and purchase our product. And once they are making the purchase, they are hopefully at the desired brand knowledge. Now, we have a variety of marketing communications options available to us, as we've already stated. So let's categorize them to make them easier for us to work with. The first option that we have available is media advertising. Now, we all know advertising to be paid for marketing communications that have an identifiable sponsor. If you see a billboard for Coke, it's always very clear to you that Coca-Cola is the person who paid for the billboard. And your media advertising is a powerful way for us to create strong, favorable, and unique brand association and elicit positive judgments and feelings. Remember, whenever we refer to those three terms, strong, favorable, and unique, we are talking about building brand image. And brand image is one of the two components of brand equity. Brand equity is made up of brand awareness and brand image. Media advertising is slightly controversial because it can be difficult to measure how effective it is. How do I know that my billboard on the side of the highway is generating sales inside the store? It's a little bit of a difficult one to measure. The next option that we have available to us is direct response advertising. So direct response advertising is great because it is much easier for me to measure. I get an immediate response from my customer. And the two most common examples we have of direct response is infomercials, where they tell you to call now and place your order, and catalogs, where you would tick off or mark down what items you would like to order and then send your order. The next type that we look at is online advertising. Obviously, this is one of our new media options. And an example would be pop-up ads or banner advertising or anything else that you would come across if you were online. Then we have place advertising. Place advertising is based around a specific location. So it is where the ad stays at that point and the target market comes to and from that location. So an example would be a billboard. The billboard stays in its spot next to the highway and us as customers drive past it. We also have point of purchase advertising that we can use. And point of purchase is at the place where the customer purchases the product. So those lovely displays that we see for new products inside the stores are an example of point of purchase advertising. Then we have promotions. And when we talk about promotions here, we're not talking about promotions as one of your 4 Ps. So remember, your 4 Ps are your marketing mix. They are price, product, place, and promotion. In that context, promotion means marketing communications. It's an umbrella term for all your marketing communications. Now, in this context, we are referring to sales promotion as an element of the marketing communications mix, and it is another, we are basically referring to sales promotion, which are things like having a sale, offering coupons, offering rebates, things like that. So we have 2 types of sales promotions in marketing communications. One being trade promotions, which are incentives that we offer to our retailers and our wholesalers to encourage them to purchase our products. The other is the one that we are probably most accustomed to seeing, and those are consumer promotions. And those are the ones that are aimed at our customers to encourage them to purchase our product and to choose us over a competitor. It may also be used to try and encourage them to purchase a little bit more than they normally would. So a buy 2, get 1 free special. And it could also be aimed at getting customers to change the timing of their purchase. Again, a buy 2, get 1 free special. Say for shampoo, you might buy 1 bottle of shampoo a month, but if I give you a buy 2, get 1 free special, you're going to be taking 3 bottles at one time. Then we have event marketing and sponsorship. And this is made up of public sponsorship of events and activities. These are the most common ones that I think we think about when we think of sponsorship, are sporting events. But it can also be arts and cultural events and other types of entertainment, as well as social causes or charity events. And the aim of this type of marketing communication is to attach your brand to an event that you feel will enhance your overall brand equity. We call that leveraging, and we're going to talk about it a little bit more in the next chapter. And it's also so that your brand can be seen to care about that particular sporting event or charity, arts and cultural event. And that can also endear you to your target market if they are also supportive of those types of events. Then we have publicity and PR, PR standing for public relations. And these are any types of programs that we run that are designed to promote goodwill or just enhance our image within the general public. Normally, publicity and PR are free of charge. We have very little control of them as marketers. We send out press releases or we host charity events, and we would hope that editors would pick up, or journalists would pick up that information and share it via newspapers, magazines, radio, TV, even blogs, social media sites, that type of thing. And our final option to add to our marketing communication mix is personal selling. So personal selling is whenever there is a face-to-face interaction between the marketer or a marketing sales representative and the customer. And we will try and encourage the customer to make a purchase through our face-to-face interactions. So basically, that is the complete summary. I'm just going to go back to that slide. It's a complete summary of options that you have available to you. And your aim is to mix and match these elements to find the best combination of options available to you. Now, your outcome for this particular section is to outline the major 4 marketing communication options and the related tactical issues. So the 4 main ones that we are going to be addressing are, and they are classified together in your learner guide, but they are basically advertising, promotion, online marketing, and events and sponsorship. So those are your 4 major marketing communication options. And then your other 2 being brand PR and publicity and word of mouth are actually what we call brand amplifiers. And the term amplifier meaning basically to just enhance and support. So the 4 main things that we are going to use in our brand building will be advertising, promotion, online marketing communications, and event sponsorship. And then we will use publicity, PR, and word of mouth to enhance those efforts. And as you can see, advertising, promotion, and events sponsorship are not new media. These are part of our traditional media options. The only new one that we've included in there is online. So it just shows how we're going to try and create the ultimate mix of elements that is best going to suit our brand objectives and our target market. So we have already discussed advertising. We've said that it is one of the most powerful methods that we can use, and it is a little bit controversial because it's a little bit difficult for us to measure the exact outcomes of advertising. However, we do have a little plan or structure for how we can develop the ideal advertising campaign. Now, in your exam, you're definitely not going to be asked to draw up an advertising campaign. However, you may be asked to discuss how you would go about it, and that would require you to know the 6 elements. In your textbook, it is actually discussed as the 6 success factors of advertising. So we just need to be aware of some terminology that could come up. So 6 success factors of advertising, or the 6 elements of your ideal advertising campaign. So step 1 is you have to make sure that the right customer is exposed to the right message at the right place at the right time. And this is why it's so important for us to choose our channel or our medium correctly. Number 2, the creative strategy for the advertising should cause the consumer to notice and attend to the ad, but it should never distract them from the intended message. So we don't want the creative element of the advertising to actually draw attention away from our brand and our brand message. Thirdly, the ad should properly reflect the consumer's level of understanding about the product or the brand. We have to make sure that the content matches the customer's memory node. Remember, we said consistency is the key. The more times I expose you to the same information, the stronger your memory is going to be of it. So I have to make sure that I'm pitching my content at the correct level for my target market. 4th step is that the ad should correctly position the brand in terms of my desirable and deliverable points of difference and points of parity. So these are discussed in the earlier chapters of your textbook, But to give you a quick recap, a point of difference is the unique characteristics of your brand, and a point of parity are the characteristics that you have that are similar to your competitors. Then point 5, the ad should always motivate the customer to purchase the brand, or say for example we're a non-profit organization, we would then want the ad to encourage them to support us. And lastly, the ad should create strong brand associations to all of these stored communication effects so that they can have an effect on the consumers when they consider making a purchase. You don't want it to be a fleeting moment where they watch the ad and then forget it. You would hope that when they are in the store situation, they are looking at a variety of items on a store shelf, your ad comes back to mind and it almost encourages them to purchase your product. We have a number of categories of advertising. You have TV advertising, radio advertising, print. You also have direct response advertising, which we've discussed, interactive or online advertising, websites, things like that. We now also have mobile marketing, where we can advertise or communicate with people via social media, SMS, and then we have our place advertising, which we have already discussed. So that is our first option in terms of marketing communications. Let's move on to our second option, which is promotion. So as discussed, promotions are things that are designed to encourage the customer to purchase now. They are usually short-term, so they would run for maybe a week or two. Often with promotions, we say things like while stocks last. So it is definitely intended to be a short-term method to encourage purchase. Marketers can target sales promotions, as we discussed, at either the trade or consumers. Examples of consumer promotions would be things like, as we said, sales, coupons, buy two get one free specials, that type of thing. Whereas in promotions aimed at the trade are more focused at incentivizing them to stock and push more of your product in their sales. And that could be things like competitions, or perhaps even giving them a certain percentage of stock for free if they reach a sales target. Then our third option is event marketing and sponsorship. And this is, as we said, where we are going to offer our support to an event and in return have our name associated with that event. And it could be a sporting event, arts and cultural, entertainment, or it could be social causes and charities as well. And the nice thing about using event marketing and sponsorship is that it adds an additional element to the overall perception of our brand. And it can help us to actually build resonance, where the customer will start to feel like the brand has a relationship with them because you share common interests, and it adds a little bit of personality to our brand. Then our public relations and publicity, we said these are brand amplifiers. We use them to assist us in building our brand equity. And we used the term word of mouth earlier. And word of mouth marketing, we know what that's all about. It's where other customers go out and basically do advertising for us. But online, word of mouth advertising has been termed viral or buzz marketing. And this is where things will spread very quickly online. And online word of mouth, or viral marketing, tends to spread much faster than traditional word of mouth, simply because of the vast number of people who have access to your social media comments. Then the fourth element of our marketing communications mix is personal selling. And we have a few keys that are given to us on how to improve our personal selling skills. And the first tactic that is given to us as a method of improving personal selling is to rethink how we train our salespeople. And we should always focus on training them so that they will be able to best satisfy customer needs. Then we should ensure that we get everyone in the company involved. We should inspire our salespeople from top management, leading by example. We should also change the motivation. We should be very careful that our salespeople are not motivated by sales targets. They should rather be motivated by satisfying customers and building our brand as a strong brand. Then we should focus on forging or building electronic links with our customers. Like we said, using the new media options make it a way for us to stay in constant communication with our customers. So electronic links like digital media, social media communications allow for that to happen. And then we are also able to talk to our customers via our social media options and just keep the communication flowing, keep our brand relevant in their minds, and help us to build those strong relationships or brand resonance. So we've looked at all of the different options that we have available. Now we need to look at integrating those options. So we said we are looking for synergy. So we want everything working together, and we want each element to enhance and support the other elements that we are using. And our integrated marketing communications, or IMC, are the voice of our brand. And this is a means by which we can open a dialogue or two-way communication with our customers and build relationships with them. Integrated marketing communications will allow our marketers to inform, persuade, and remind our customers, and also to provide them with incentives via our sales promotions so that hopefully they will become more supportive of our brand. And we can contribute to our brand equity by using our integrated marketing communications to establish a strong connection in our customers' memory with our brand, and to also encourage those strong, favorable, and unique brand associations. And remember we said strong, favorable, unique is linked to brand image. So to quickly close off this chapter, we need to look at how we are going to develop our integrated marketing communication programs. And basically this means that we need to use our mix of communication options. We need to evaluate all the options that we've discussed, and we are going to analyze each of them and determine the strengths and weaknesses of each different one, and then we are going to combine them in the optimal mix. And the aim of this mix is that we should be achieving synergy, where each of the elements work better together than what they would on their own. And whenever possible, the elements should be linked through common visual or verbal information, meaning there should be some repetition, or as we said earlier, consistency, because increased consistency means increased awareness. Now, each of the elements that we choose should be based on that element's ability to achieve the desired brand knowledge that we looked at in the beginning of this section of your work, and get the customer to see how this brand is different from the other brands in the market. And part of that difference is working towards our brand equity. We are then reminded again of the 6 success factors of advertising, which are very similar to our information processing model that I introduced to you guys at the beginning of this particular study unit, where we have exposure, we want to get their attention, we want them to comprehend or understand our message, we want positive yielding or responses from them, we want to motivate them to have intentions to purchase, and we also want to stimulate good consumer behavior, where they go out and purchase our brand and hopefully remain loyal customers for us. When we are designing our IMC programs, there are 2 aspects to the design. The first aspect is where we are going to be defining the position of our brand, and the second one will be where we are communicating that position to our brand. When we define our position, this is where we are going to be looking at our competitive frame of reference, our points of parity, and our points of difference. And when we are finished defining our brand positioning, Then we will be able to move on to communicating that positioning. And this will involve 3 separate types of communication. We will communicate information to our customer, and information will always be related to the benefits that the brand brings, like the problem that it is going to solve, or offering them a testimonial of another customer who's had a good experience with our brand. Then the second type of communication that we will offer them is transformational information. And this is where we are going to be building our brand image. And finally, we will be giving them motivational information. And we call this borrowed interest. And it is where we use specific creative appeal to attract our customers' attention. And generally, those appeals would be things like using humor. For example, Nando's ad uses a lot of humor, or maybe using exciting special effects so that people are intrigued by the ad and excited to see it whenever it is broadcast. Please remember that we did mention earlier, we have to be careful that we don't use motivational to an extent where the creative side of the ad detracts from our message about our brand. We want it to be something that draws attention to our brand rather than something that detracts from our brand. And finally, once we've put our integrated marketing communications program together, we need to evaluate whether it is going to be successful or not. And this evaluation is based on what we call the 6 C's. C number 1 looks at coverage. Does this program, the combination of all the different elements that I've chosen, reach enough of my target market? The next thing I need to consider then is cost. We know that every element that we've listed can be quite expensive, and we need to make sure that we are budgeting well and that we are budgeting efficiently, that we are using our money in the best ways possible. Now, when we look at coverage, the diagram that you see here shows how I may be choosing 3 different communication channels. I may be choosing a TV ad combined with a Facebook advertising campaign, mixed together with a little bit of in-store promotion. And what happens is each of these options are going to lead me to different market coverage. And what my aim is, where I'm achieving the best results, is here in the middle, where a single customer is getting exposed to all 3 of those communication messages. Because that is when I have repeated exposure, which will lead to enhanced brand awareness and will get me to the salient points of my customer-based brand equity model. And hopefully each of those communication channels have also helped me in creating meaning, positive responses, and then developing a stronger relationship with my customer. Okay, so we've looked at 2 of the C's so far. We've looked at coverage and cost. The next 2 C's are contribution. Hopefully each of my elements and my overall campaign will have a collective positive effect on building brand equity in terms of brand awareness, and then strong, favorable, and unique aspects of brand image. The 4th C that I'm looking at is then commonality. There needs to be something in common that is shared between all of those communication choices. And remember, again, this refers to consistency or shared visual and verbal information. And that brings us to our last 2 C's. Complementarity, where hopefully all of my C's are working, all of my elements are working together and creating synergy, and they are enhancing and supporting one another. And my last C is conformability, which in previous versions of the textbook was actually referred to as versatility. And I think having the versatility there helps us to understand the term a bit better. It means that your options are able to work in a variety of contexts. So the options will suit different market segments, perhaps even suit different markets and just become more useful and flexible. Okay, so those are the 6 C's that we are considering. Coverage, cost, contribution, commonality, complementarity, and conformability. Finally, the textbook gives you some marketing communication guidelines. There are 8 guidelines to be specific. The first one is be analytical. Make sure that everything that you choose has been well researched and there's a reason behind its choice. Be curious. We need to understand our target market in order to make good decisions. Be single-minded. You have to be focusing on a well-defined target market. I'm not going to be able to reach the right customer with the right message at the right time if I don't know who that customer is. Then be integrated. Make sure that everything is integrated, working together, we have consistency, and you have synergy. The last 4 guidelines are be creative. You need to stand out in a marketing environment that is very cluttered. Be observant. Make sure that we are constantly aware of what our competitors are doing, what our customers are doing, what our channel members, retailers, and wholesalers are doing, as well as what our employees are doing. We need to be realistic. We can have the most fantastically well-designed brand equity marketing communications program, but it is going to take a long time for us to establish brand equity. So we have to be realistic in our expectations of how successful our programs are going to be, and then we also just need to be patient because brand building is a long-term process. Although sales promotions might get us a lot of sales in the short term, that doesn't equate directly to building brand loyalty and brand equity. And that then brings us to your revision questions, which you will see in your learner guide, which again, I encourage you to go over. So before I ask if there's any questions, I would just like to congratulate the people that are online listening. There was a technical problem that you guys worked together and managed to overcome. So Leslie is now operating with the rest of us. So I thank you for your assistance there. And then does anyone have any questions relating to the content that we have covered here in chapter 6? I just got a query now asking if the slides are available for download. I'm not sure if they are or not, but I will get confirmation on that and I will get back to you. Are there any other questions? Okay, so I think that we can continue and have a look at our next study unit. Study unit 6 is now relating to chapter 7 of your textbook. And the focus of chapter 7 is on leveraging. As I said, we were going to get to that later. Basically, when we look at leveraging, we are looking at secondary associations, which is where you borrow perception from a secondary item and you attach it to your brand to help you build equity for your particular brand. Now, your outcomes for this section are all focused on leveraging. They are to outline the 8 main ways to leverage your secondary associations, which are summarized in the diagram that you can see on the slide now. It is also present in your textbook as well as in your learner guide. And then to describe some of the key tactical issues that are associated with each of these different forms of leveraging. So the content is actually quite narrow, when we look at this study unit. And as you can tell, the questioning would be very much application-based. So I would like everyone to practice, look at a brand and see what different elements do they leverage, just so that you have a good knowledge of how you would apply it in a real-life situation. So looking at our leveraging. Leveraging focuses on the creation of new brand associations. So we have established how we want people to feel about our brand, and we are then able to attach associations from other places to enhance our overall brand knowledge and image. It affects your existing brand knowledge by increasing awareness, which we know is an integral part of brand equity. It can also add meaningfulness, add a deeper level of meaning to what our customers already know about our brand. And it can also add transferability, meaning that we transfer already established knowledge and perception from the other party to our brand, meaning that instead of having to build it up ourselves, we're able to kind of steal it from somebody else and attach it to our own brand. Now, if you have a look at this diagram, how are we going to leverage secondary associations for our brand? Or in other words, exploit the perception that people have about other things to improve or enhance or boost our own brand equity. We have 4 main areas that we can consider, and each of those is then expanded upon a little bit deeper. So the first thing that we can do with our brand is attach our brand to other brands. So we can form alliances, we can use ingredient branding, we can use our parent company, and all of the, generally your parent company has a broader appeal and is seen as being a bigger brand in scope, and people have a little bit more knowledge about it. And we can also then use brand extensions. Then, second option available for leveraging is to leverage based on place. 2 options here are country of origin leveraging, where we are going to focus on where the brand actually started and where its roots are, or our channels of distribution. Often the retailers that we choose to market our product through have a big impact on the way that customers perceive our brand. The third leveraging option that we have is to increase our brand equity by attaching ourselves to other things. These things could either be events, like what we looked at with our sponsorship. It could be to causes, again, what we looked at with sponsorship. And it could also come in the form of third-party endorsements. And then our fourth and final option for leveraging is to attach our brand to certain people. We can either do this by using endorsers. The most common is a celebrity endorser who will say that they use our product and offer a testimonial for us. Or we can use our own employees. Often our employees are qualified, renowned individuals, and then it only works to our advantage to exploit the fact that they are linked with our brand. So when we are looking at brand associations, we are often linking our brand to other entities, and that is how we actually create the secondary association. We can connect ourselves to our parent company through various branding strategies. We can connect ourselves to our country of origin by strongly identifying our brand with the country that it is produced in. We can use our channels of distribution through our channel strategy. We can also use other brands through the use of co-branding, like ingredient branding or alliances. We can use our brand in the form of using special characters to enhance our brand, where we would license those special characters. We can use celebrity spokespeople who are going to endorse our brand for us, use our events like sponsorship, or other third-party sources, like if we were to win an award, or if perhaps we were to get an expert in the industry to say that they approve or recommend our particular brand. Now, The reason why we would want to use a secondary association is because we are going to get a transfer, or that secondary association is going to reflect positively on our brand. There are two types of transfers or reflections that we could look at. The first is response type reflection, where people judge our brand better because of the association, or feelings, where people have warmer or more positive feelings towards our brand because of the association. We also have meaning type associations, where again we will have a better perception in the target market regarding our performance and our imagery based on our association with the leveraged element. Now, they said to us, as your first outcome was to outline the various types of leveraging. Your second outcome is then to describe the key tactical issues. So we're quickly going to go through each of the leverages, and we're going to look at the particular characteristics for each of them. So firstly, if we have a look at co-branding, this occurs when two or more existing brands are combined into a joint product or are marketed together in some way. The examples that we have are Sony Ericsson. They combined and they marketed themselves together. Another example would be where Nestle put Smarties into their slab of chocolate. So you are co-branding the Smarties brand with the Nestle's chocolate slab brand. And the third example is McDonald's and Oreo McFlurry, where you have the McDonald's brand and the Oreo brand joining together. What are the advantages of this co-branding? Firstly, you can borrow needed expertise. So no one associates McDonald's with making great biscuits, but Oreo is a globally known biscuit brand. So McDonald's would leverage their expertise in the biscuit industry and use that ingredient in their McFlurry. It also means that you can leverage equity that you may not have. It can reduce the cost of your product introduction because people are already aware of your product because they are aware of the other brand that you're joining together with. It can expand your brand meaning into related categories because now your brand is no longer just related to your brand category, but is also related to your partner's brand category. And this means that it can make your brand accessible in more ways to your customer. So if we think about McDonald's and their Oreo McFlurries, Oreos are available to customers through supermarkets, and now it was available to customers at an additional access point through a fast food outlet. And co-branding is also a source of additional revenue because it gives you extra opportunities to sell your product. However, co-branding is not all positives. There are a few negatives. Whenever you are co-branding, you lose some control over your brand because you are now attached to somebody else's brand. There is a risk of what we call brand equity dilution. And the best way for us to describe dilution is through an example with OROS. So you can mix OROS the way that you are instructed to, where it is a nice orange color and it is the perfect sweetness. I can then go and add additional water, and it will slowly lose its color and the flavor will be diluted. And at the end of the process, if I take a sip of the OROS, it doesn't even taste like OROS anymore because it's been so diluted. And that is a problem with co-branding. We can end up attaching our brand to so many things that the essence or the meaning or the flavor of the brand gets watered down and we're actually not sure what our brand stands for anymore. Then a few other disadvantages of co-branding is negative feedback. Maybe people hate Oreo McFlurries. The Oreos go soggy in the ice cream and it actually ends up having a negative impact on how people view Oreo cookies. There could be a lack of brand focus and clarity. And finally, we may end up with organizational distractions, Where is my focus? Is it on my brand or is it on my partner's brand? Then we get ingredient branding. So this is a type of co-branding where you will use the partner brand as an integral ingredient in your particular product. And a common example to anyone who has a computer is Intel Inside, where Intel provides the hard drive for inside your computer, and it often makes you feel that the computer system or laptop that you are purchasing is good quality because there's a good quality ingredient. Another South African example would be Mrs. Ball's chutney flavored Simba chips, where Simba is using Mrs. Ball's chutney as an ingredient in their brand of chips, but it is also improving the brand associations, because if you love Mrs. Ball's chutney, you would then love that flavor of Simba chips. We also have the case of licensing, and this is where a firm will allow you to use their brand for a fee. A very common example that we see is companies like Disney licensing clothing retailers to use their cartoon images on items of clothing and other merchandise. And it is basically where you will improve the image of your brand by using another name that can go along with it. And then celebrity endorsements. We all have seen many celebrity endorsements, and we know what they're all about. Basically, the celebrity is going to bring added appeal to your brand, and they are going to improve the image of your brand because the celebrity will claim to be a supporter of your brand. And something that's important with celebrity endorsements is that we are careful who we choose to endorse our brands, because we wouldn't want to use anyone that is going to actually have a negative impact on our brand equity. So some South African examples of brand endorsers. Casper Nyovest endorses MTN, KFC, Castle Life and Ciroc, and Bonan endorses Revlon, Woolworths, Brutal Fruit, also Ciroc, and Diva Divine Hair. So these celebrities are adding their name to increase the appeal of the brand to the target market. The main concept behind a celebrity endorsement is that the celebrity is going to draw attention to your brand, and that they are going to shape the way that the customer perceives the brand. So it's important that we choose the correct celebrity. Otherwise, the way that the brand is shaped or the perception attached is not going to be appropriate to our target market. So we have 6 criteria that we are going to use when we choose a celebrity endorser. Firstly, we have to make sure that our celebrity has high visibility. If they are not seen everywhere and very well known, then they're not going to be enhancing our brand that much. Secondly, the celebrity should have positive associations that they are going to bring to the brand. They should have some form of expertise with that particular product category. They need to be trustworthy. They need to be likable to the target market. And they also have to be relevant to the brand, so that the associations that we're attaching to our brand or that are reflecting upon our brand are going to be relevant to the image that we are trying to create for our brand. There are some potential problems with us using our celebrity endorsers. The first one is that celebrity endorsers may over-endorse and be associated with so many products that, again, we almost get to a little bit of dilution, where you eventually start to feel like the celebrity does not honestly support these brands. They just want to get the money from being an endorser. We also have to make sure that the celebrity fits well with our product and with our brand. We have to make sure that the celebrity always has positive associations, doesn't end up in troublesome situations or lose popularity. Otherwise, that could have a knock-on effect onto our brand equity. Many consumers feel that celebrities are only doing endorsements for the money. So the endorsement must be believable, that the celebrity would honestly support and use this particular brand. And finally, like we said, the creative side or the celebrity endorser should not detract from our brand. We don't want our ad to be focusing on the celebrity. We want the ad to be focusing on our brand, and the celebrity is just there to enhance that overall image. If we are looking at sponsoring events, then we would hope that these would add to our brand equity by improving our brand awareness. As you know, if you sponsor events like the Olympics or the Soccer World Cup, your logo is on TV screens all over the world in some cases. It can also add additional associations to your brand and improve the strength, favorability, and uniqueness of existing associations. If we think about why would McDonald's constantly sponsor the Olympics, which is a sporting event that focuses on people who are at the peak of their sporting careers and extraordinarily fit and healthy. What is the correlation with McDonald's in that instance? And by being associated with these events, McDonald's is trying to indirectly overcome the perception that their products are unhealthy by associating themselves with extremely healthy situations like sporting events. The main means by which an event can transfer associations is that it's going to give us credibility. For examples of some South African events that are sponsored, other than the obvious ones, we have the fact that Standard Bank sponsors the Grahamstown Jazz Festival and that SPAR sponsors the South African National Netball events. So in this way, you are creating awareness, you're also possibly attracting additional customers who would be the target market of the sponsorship event, and they would feel that they have something in common with the brand because the brand is interested in the same type of events as they are. Then looking at our third-party sources, often we will get a credible third-party source to say that they recommend our brand for some reason. And we often see this on toothpaste ads where they will say that a dentist recommends this brand of toothpaste. One of the best examples of third-party campaigning that we see on South African TV and print is the Buchanan Group. And they're a South African agency who endorses a lot of brands. And they do this through the brand power section of their group and the Medifact section of their group. And I'm sure that you will be familiar with those two, brand power and Medifact, where they give a recommendation to the target market to use that particular product. And that is the summary of your leveraging complete. So as I said, a narrow focus in terms of content, but application is going to be what is key. And I would again encourage you to go through the 5 revision questions that you have at the end of your learner guide for this section, because they will assist you in practicing your application. Having finished study unit 6, which is chapter 7 in your textbook, does anyone have any questions relating to leveraging? Fantastic. Seems like everybody has been focusing well and understands what's going on. So that allows me to then move on to study unit 7, which is chapter 9 in your textbooks. I know how we love to skip a chapter in our textbook, a little bit less studying for us. So we get to now skip ahead to our chapter on measuring sources of brand equity. And this is a chapter that, if you guys have a look at the past papers that are available to you on your student portal, and I have experienced a few more past papers than that, it is a section of work that is often asked in the exam, again because it's good theory content and it has that application element. which we are looking for from you in the brand management module. So if you have a look at your student paper, the content for this study unit appears on chapter 3 of your page 3 of your paper, and there are two outcomes. The first one is you need to be able to describe effective qualitative research techniques, and then you need to be able to identify effective quantitative research techniques. And basically, these are ways that we are going to measure our brand equity. So up until now, we've taught you how you're going to build your brand equity. And once it's built, you obviously want to be able to measure it to see what effect your marketing campaigns have had on your market, and to also see if you've achieved your brand equity goal. So moving on to chapter 9, we begin by putting brand equity in perspective. Brand equity can be viewed from several different perspectives. The main focus, however, is financial outcome. Ultimately, as we learned in the earlier chapters, we are focusing on building brand equity so that we can earn more revenue in our company. And one of the main ways that we do that is by charging a premium. In other words, we are able to charge a high price for our brand if it is viewed in a strong, positive light by our target market. And so in other words, brand equity is measured by how much more a customer will pay for a product that has our brand name on it versus the exact same product without our brand name on it. And that is our ideal measure of brand equity. Or as we said, equity always means value. The value our brand is adding to our offering in the market. The softer perspective is to look at brand extension, where we consider the value that a brand lends when we are introducing new products or offerings into the market. And basically, we will consider whether our brand would add value by attaching that brand to the new item, or if we should actually launch the new item on its own and establish a brand around it as an individual. And generally, if you own a strong, well-recognized brand, it will always be better for you to leverage the power in that brand and form a brand extension. The following steps address a third perspective, where we look at the brand equity or value a brand has from the customer perspective. So, how am I going to go about measuring my brand equity? So we have a few steps that we can go through. The first step is I need to determine my brand equity research goals. What is it that I want to measure in the market? Am I tracking brand awareness levels? Am I exploring if there's been a change in the brand knowledge that my customers have? Or am I checking to see if my brand power has increased? Secondly, we will then seek to understand the customer's brand attitude. How do they feel about the brand? What experiences have they had with our brand, and what do they say about our brand to others? Thirdly, I will identify the brand equity components that I would like to measure. And basically, then we're going to focus on always brand equity, looks at brand awareness, brand image, and we can also look at the reach of my brand. How many members of my target market have been exposed to and have adopted my brand? The fourth step is then to measure the perceived brand differentiation. Have I managed to develop a unique image in the market? Do I have brand loyalty? Do I have brand confidence? And what is the likelihood of customers switching between my brand and competitors' brands? And finally, I will look at my qualitative versus my quantitative brand equity data. And that is the main focus of this chapter, looking at the qualitative and the quantitative brand equity. So let us quickly have a look at the characteristics of quantitative research versus qualitative research. And you can find this in your learner guide. Quantitative research asks very specific questions, and the answers are already prepared for the respondent. So you don't get to answer however you feel. You are given a selection of choices that you need to choose from. You will collect data from the participants, and you will analyze the data in a numerical way, generally using stats. And you will then conduct the inquiry in an unbiased and an objective manner, because your focus is on numbers and scientific significance and sound statistical procedures. Qualitative research is sort of opposite of that in every way. Instead of asking specific questions with specific answers, qualitative research is more general and broad and asking people for their own opinion. You will collect data mainly through people writing down their opinions or through people using images to communicate. And you will look more at describing and analyzing the words that people have used or the themes that they have used, rather than being able to identify through numbers and statistics. And then you will conduct an inquiry in a more subjective and biased manner, because here you are looking to find out how people feel, and feelings are, by their nature, subjective. In your textbook, you have a summary of the different qualitative and quantitative research techniques, which is quite useful to you when you are doing your revision. You just need to check that you are able to briefly explain what each of these different types represents. I will give you the page number in a second. It is summarized at the end of chapter 9 on page 353, and it is figure 9.30 if you're looking. So it's a great summary of the different options that you have available to you when conducting your research. Now we're going to start off by looking at quantitative methods, and these always provide a numerical measure of things. So you're going to measure how many people think a certain way, feel a certain way, or behave a certain way, and you use statistical analysis. If you want to know how many of your customers would like your product to have a certain change made to it, then you would use quantitative methods. Things like, do people prefer our packaging to be red, or do they prefer our packaging to be blue? Qualitative research, however, is where you are going to push your customers or probe them to find out more about how they really feel. And we often look for indirect associations that our customers make as well. And you'll see how some of the methods that I'm going to show you bring up almost subconscious or indirect associations from the respondents. These methods, which permit a relatively unlimited range of verbal responses, include things like free association, projective techniques, and asking the respondent or consumer to describe the brand's personality and values. Data that is gathered in this way generally needs to be coded and aggregated or collected and then put into different categories or themes in order for it to be useful. Don't worry too much about the research side behind it. At this point, you guys just need to have a thorough understanding of what the different methods are and how they are useful. You won't necessarily be asked to apply them in a research situation. So while these two methods are often used individually, quantitative or qualitative, we are also more than welcome to use them in combination. And this allows us to benefit from the positive attributes of both methods. And we call this mixed methodology research. You may be considering using a customer satisfaction survey for the first time, for example. And while you may have an idea of what is important to your customer, they might have a different idea of what's important to them. So initially, you would go about conducting qualitative research to find out more about your customer and the particular topic. And once you found out more, then you would have the necessary information to construct a quantitative research technique to go along with it. Now, when we look at qualitative research, what are we looking at? We are looking at who buys our product, who makes the decision to buy, who influences the decision to buy, how is the purchase decision made, who assumes that role, what does the customer buy, why do they buy, where do they go to buy, when do they buy, what are their attitudes towards the product, what social factors influence the purchase, does their lifestyle influence the purchase, how is our product perceived by the customer, and do demographic factors influence our purchase. One of the main or most commonly used methods of qualitative research is the method of free association. So basically, free association is where I will give you the name of my brand and ask you to tell me the first thing that comes to mind. So up on the screen, you'll see that I have an example of a free association that was done for Levi's. You also have an example in your textbook of a free association or a mental map that was done for Apple. And it's basically you say the brand name and people say as many things as they can think of when they think of that brand name. Now, previously, we said that your findings for qualitative research will have to be coded and aggregated. If you have a look here, you will see that the responses have been put into different themes. So customers said things like, when I think of Levi's, I think of blue denim. Someone else said, I think of shrink to fit. Someone else said, I think of cotton fabric. Another respondent said, I think of a button fly. Another one said, I think of a 2-horse patch. Another said, I think of a small red pocket tag. And upon receiving all of these different responses, the researcher groups them into the theme or category of product related. And so they are grouped according to user imagery, usage imagery, brand personality, the symbolism behind the brand, the experience behind the brand, and the brand touch. Okay. So basically that's how free association works. Say as many things as come to mind, and then the researcher will later go and group those things into common themes or concepts. Another method that is often used is the projective technique of sentence completion, where you give people sentences that have words missing, and they will then complete it as they see fit. Again, unlimited responses are available, and it gives us a little bit deeper understanding of how customers feel about a brand. If you have a look at the example on the screen, it's about people who drink Coke. And one of the questions is, if my friend bought me a can of Coke, I would stay. And the respondent would write down their response, and it would give you a better understanding of how the respondent feels about the Coke brand. Another type of projective technique is that of cartoon completion, where you would give people a cartoon image and a speech bubble, and it is their job to fill in the speech bubble. Sometimes there will be a single speech bubble, other times it will be a conversation between 2 or more cartoon characters, and they would complete numerous speech bubbles in there. I have 2 examples of Coke speech bubble completion for you to consider. Then another type of projective technique that we often use is the technique of brand personification. And this is where I give my brand a personality. So it would include questioning like, if Coke was a person, what would they look like? How would they dress? Where would they eat for lunch? Things like that. And again, it gives you an understanding of how customers view the brand once you understand how they would feel about the brand as an individual. Another technique that we often use is called laddering. And laddering is, we call it a probing technique, where you push customers to keep answering more and more in detail how they feel about a brand. And generally the process is we start with values, we look at the benefits that they seek, and we look at the features associated with the brand. And it's just a constant line of questioning that forces the customer to answer a little bit more each time. There's an example of a laddering technique on the screen now. The moderator would say to Jenny, "Why do you like Coke?" Jenny would answer, "I like it because it is more refreshing than having water." Now, laddering is to continue to question and probe and get more insight. So the moderator says, "What makes this important to you?" Jenny then says, "It makes me feel invigorated." The moderator then says, "What benefit does this provide you?" Jenny says, "I feel like I have energy to continue my day." The moderator says, "Energy," and Jenny says, "Well, I think the caffeine gives me a boost." So, if we took Jenny's first answer, she likes Coke because it's refreshing, which is a very broad statement. But after laddering and probing some more, we finally get to the root of the reason why she likes Coke, because it has caffeine in it, and she perceives that as giving her energy. The next qualitative method that is discussed within your textbook is the Z-MET method. And the logic behind the Z-MET method, it's called the Z-MET method because it was developed by a researcher whose surname was Zaltman. And Z-MET stands for the Zaltman metaphor elicitation technique. And Zaltman came up with this technique because as humans, we don't think in words, we think in images. And these images show a combination of our conscious and our unconscious thoughts. So up on the screen now you have an example of a series of 9 collages that were put together in research on, the topic was on Coca-Cola, and respondents were asked to compile a selection of images based on how which they felt represented Coca-Cola. And as you can see, almost all of them have a smiley face, so we can then conclude that customers view Coke as being a happy product. You'll also see a lot of them associated it with fast food. A lot of them associated it with the American flag. Also, the associations are quite masculine. In every group, there are predominantly males who are included in the picture categories, and so on. And basically, this method is just used for you to get a graphic idea of how the customer is. We have a few guidelines associated with our use of qualitative research. There are 2 main issues that we need to consider whenever we are using free association. And that includes the type of probes that we give our subjects or respondents, and how to code and interpret the resulting data. So obviously they're going to give you a wide range of responses, but as we've seen from the Levi's example, the researcher would then group those responses into categories. Then when we use our projective techniques, we would often include 2 different samples. So in the example that you have on the screen here, this example is also in your textbook, you'll see that 2 different groups of people were tested so that you can compare the results between the 2. In this particular projective technique, people were given one of 2 shopping lists, and they had to try and say who they thought they were based on the shopping list that they were given. And as you can see, the 2 shopping lists are identical, except that the brand of coffee included in each is different. And the aim of this study was then to identify how customers viewed the people who used the one brand of coffee versus how they viewed people who used the other brand of coffee. If you want to read more about this particular technique, it is in your textbook on page 329. It is Branding in Brief Exercise 9.2. And it's quite interesting the results that they found. When we look at projective techniques, often the reason why we use imagery is because customers may be unwilling or unable to express themselves verbally. Sometimes they don't even know what their true feelings are. They might think that they feel neutral towards the brand, but in actual fact they don't. And often if we use completion tasks like our sentence completion or interpretation tasks like our cartoon example, it just allows us to find out a little bit more about how customers feel. Another type of projective technique that we can use is a method called using archetypes. And this is where you ask the customer to describe how they feel a product to be. And an example that your textbook gives you is the archetype for cheese. And in France, they say that French people feel that cheese is alive because it is aged. And the fact that the longer that it's aged, the more tastes it has, and things like that. Research was done that allowed us to conclude that the American customers of cheese had a completely different perception of it. They viewed cheese as being something that was dead because it tends to be wrapped in plastic and stuck in the fridge, which they associated with an item that had no life left in it. So in that way, we were able to identify indirectly how customers view cheese in a way that they probably wouldn't have answered if we said to them, what do you think about when you think about cheese? I doubt that anyone would have said, oh, I think it's alive with bacteria, or I think that it's dead because it's in the fridge, which is like a wall in my house. A few other qualitative research techniques that your textbook does explain are storytelling, expanding on a frame, sensory metaphors, using a vignette, and digital images as well. All of these are very similar to the methods that we have already discussed in more detail. The ones that we've discussed in detail are the main focus area research techniques that we tend to use. Another interesting development that is starting to be used more and more in our research is research around neuromarketing, where instead of asking customers how they feel about things, we measure their brain responses to different stimuli. And we can do this with our branding as well. And the results that we get tend to be quite interesting. In your textbook, they show you this diagram, which links to neural research methods. You will be able to see it on page 332. It is also linked to your ZMet research as well. So it's another good example for you to just understand the ZMet method in a little bit more detail. And then we have brand personalities and values. This technique is discussed over pages 333 to page 335 in your textbook. And basically, under this approach, you ask your respondent or your customer to describe your brand based on 5 different factors of personality. And there's a few different options underneath each factor. So you would say to them, when you think of this brand, do you think that this brand is sincere? In other words, do you think this brand is down to earth? Do you think this brand is honest? Do you think this brand is wholesome? Do you think this brand is cheerful? And by identifying which personality traits are related to the brand, it enables you again to just understand a little bit deeper how your target market or your respondent view your particular brand. In line with qualitative research, we have also started to use experimental methods of research. And this is where I want to observe my target market or my respondents, but I want to observe them in an in-depth way. I want to see how they behave at home or at work or in a shopping center. And this will give me more insight into how they respond to the branding, marketing, communication messages that have been put out into the marketplace. And they give an example of this where they say that researchers were sent into consumers' homes in the morning to see how they approach their days. And another example was giving business travelers Polaroid cameras and asking them to diarize what happened throughout their travel using the Polaroid camera. So obviously the images were easier than them writing everything down. And another example was where they conducted what they called beeper studies, where participants were instructed to write down what they were doing whenever they were paged or a notification was sent to them to record what they were doing. And in this way, we can find out a little bit more about our customer behavior in terms of their responses to our marketing communication. So that concludes the qualitative research techniques. Does anyone have any questions relating to any of these methods or anything that you would like a little bit more information on? Well, it looks as though there's no questions coming in. So let us continue by going on to our quantitative methods of research. So quantitative methods are mainly aimed at identifying awareness and image, which are our two main elements of brand equity, as well as brand responses, our customers responding positively to our brand, and then brand relationships. Are they loyal to our brand? You will notice that this is very strongly linked with your building blocks of brand equity. Our building blocks are generally identity or awareness. Second building block is meaning or image. Third building block is response. And your fourth building block is your relationship. So you can see how that first customer-based brand equity model that I mentioned from chapter 3, just look for it quickly. This model on page 108 is so important to all the other chapters because we keep referring to those building blocks and the pyramid and how all of these elements help us reach our ultimate goals of brand equity and resonance and loyalty. So how do I measure awareness? Awareness is measured in two ways. I measure response, recognition and recall. Recognition means that if you show someone a brand element, like a logo, or let them listen to a jingle, they will recognize who that element belongs to. Recall is when customers or respondents are able to recall a brand from memory. For example, if I say to you, what is your favorite fast food restaurant? You would then mention that name, and that would show me brand recall. We have two types of recall, aided and unaided. Aided recall is where you give very specific guidelines on the type of brand category you're referring to. So I would say to you, what is your favorite fast food chain to eat at that has a drive-through? So now the food category is specific as well as the services that are offered by that category. Unaided is where you would say something like name a restaurant chain. So it's a lot broader in terms of what the customer might consider. In your textbook, they give you quite a nice fun activity to work on with recognition. And they give you a series of brand names with a few letters missing, and they ask you to fill in the gaps It's on page 339 of your textbook if you would like to add some fun to your studying. And it's just an example of a brand recognition exercise. Now, with quantitative research, we often have to make considerations to the fact that your researcher, your respondent, sorry, or your customer may be making up responses or simply guessing what the answer is. And there have been numerous studies done where they were testing by saying to customers, here are 4 brands, do you recognize any of them? Customers would say yes, even though none of them really exist. So things like that do tend to happen and we have to be aware of it. We also have to think of the strategic implications of quantitative research. The advantage of aided recall measures is that they give us insight into how brand knowledge is organized in the customer's memory, and also the types of cues or reminders that trigger that brand memory in our customers. It is also important to note how the categories of products are structured within customers' minds. We don't all group products and brands in the same category. And it can be insightful for us to see how different segments of the market group our brand or who they see our competitive frame of reference to be. And that is then in line with how they view points of parity and points of difference. So one of our quantitative research areas of focus is in brand image. We've looked at brand awareness now being recall or recognition. Brand image is where we ask about the strength, favorability, and uniqueness of the brand association. And remember, we always said strong, favorable, unique is associated with brand image. These associations should be rated on rating scales, generally a scale of 1 to 5. You have an example in your textbook of a rating scale that was used for Lipton iced tea. Their scaling was on a scale of 1 to 7, and it just rated Lipton on various characteristics. You can find that, it's figure 9.7, and it's on page 344. Then we look at brand responses. Now remember, responses are always related to, do customers have a favorable response to our brand, and are they likely to develop purchase intention? Meaning they think that the next time they're in that usage situation, they may consider buying our particular brand. There is an example of various brand responses in your textbook on page 345. And here they use a perceptual map, also basically a positioning map, to look at how customers rate different restaurants. And it also shows where customers wish there were restaurants, filling particular gaps. Then we look at brand relationships. And as we know in branding, we are constantly trying to move customers up to brand resonance or brand loyalty. And we want those long-term relationships. So here we look at brand behavioral loyalty, brand substitutability, in other words, our customers willing to switch to other brands, and we also look at other aspects of brand loyalty. There are 6 main facets of a brand relationship that we look at. We look at interdependence, how dependent the customer is on the brand in their daily lives. We look at the self-concept connection. Do customers identify with the brand? We look at how committed they are to the brand. We look at their level of affinity or their love or passion for the brand. We also look at intimacy with the brand, how deeply they feel the brand is part of their lives and how much understanding they have of the brand. And then we also have partner quality. Do they see themselves as being a partner with the brand and collaborating with the brand or not? And ultimately, if they do have that partner level relationship, then they will be sitting at the peak of our pyramid and they will have brand resonance. So what models can we use to measure our customer-based brand equity? We have three models: the brand dynamics model, the equity engine, and Young and Rubicam's brand asset valuator. Now, the brand dynamics model looks at 5 different levels of brand relationship. And they say to us that it starts with presence, which is very similar to salience or awareness. You will then move up to the brand being relevant. You will then judge the brand's performance. You will then judge whether the brand offers advantages over other brands in the market. And finally, when you reach the top of this particular 5-level pyramid, you conclude with bonding, which is again very similar to our brand resonance or our brand loyalty in our customer-based brand equity pyramid. We also have equity engines. The equity engine basically measures a brand on 3 different aspects. They measure whether customers feel like the brand has authority, if it is like a leader in the field. They look at whether the brand whether they identify with the brand or how close they feel to the brand. And then they look at approval. In other words, do they feel that they would get approval from their peers or society if they are shown to use the brand? And our last model is Young and Rubicam's brand asset valuator. Now, in your textbook, they go through a lengthy explanation of this model. And it is done at the end of your chapter under your brand focus for chapter 9, starting on page 353. And I recommend that you read through the entire example because it is a very detailed model. Basically, it's a model that looks at 5 key components of a brand. And we call these the pillars of the brand. And these pillars are energy and differentiation, which are combined into energized differentiation, relevance, esteem, and knowledge. And a brand is rated on each of these 4 elements. And then it is assigned a position on what we call the power grid. So the 4 main elements that we look at, we've got energized differentiation, and this looks at the basis for the customer choosing a brand, the essence of the brand, and the source of margin. Whenever we talk about margin, we're referring to that extra profit that we gain from having a price premium. When we look at relevance, we look at how well the brand relates to our customer. When we look at esteem, we look at how much respect the customer has for the brand. Do they see it as being a leader, an expert? Do they see it as having a strong reputation? And then finally, we look at brand knowledge, where we look at how much the customer actually knows about the brand and how much they've interacted or experienced the brand. Now, those 4 elements are then combined to give a rating for a brand. And this will determine whether a brand is seen as a niche market product, as a leader brand, as a brand that is declining in sales, as a brand that has eroded, or as a brand that is perhaps new or unfocused. And you might actually see some correlation to your BCG matrix model, where you had your stars and your cash cows in a question mark dot. Now, your placement on the power grid is based on differentiation and relevance, which is then combined under brand strength, and esteem and knowledge, which is combined under brand stature. And basically, looking at this diagram, it goes in order of differentiation is the first aspect that is considered. Then the next aspect that we consider is your relevance, and then esteem, and lastly knowledge. So in this case, in our niche brand, you will see that it is very differentiated. We know that it's unique, but we don't know very much about it. So it's assumed that it belongs to a small segment of the target market who isn't me, because I don't know anything about it. However, if we look at the opposite, if we look at a leader still has high differentiation, but it also has a very high level of knowledge. So customers see the brand as unique, they know about the brand, they also feel the brand relates to them, and they hold the brand in high esteem. If we look at an eroded brand, this is normally a brand that was popular once and has now kind of lost its appeal. You'll see that it's no longer seen as being unique or special in the market, although customers do know a lot about it because it used to be popular. So they know everything that there is to know, but they don't feel like it offers them anything special. Now, in your exam, you would be asked to explain the theory behind this model. And then you would be asked to identify where the brand in your case study would fit on the power grid. So it's very important that you are able to give the theory, but also be able to apply it. And that's where the brand in focus example that is given from page 353 in your textbook is going to be very helpful in that. Now, your BAV model and your customer-based brand equity pyramid model work very well together. In the BAV's knowledge rating, there is correlation to your brand salience or brand awareness at the bottom of your CBVE pyramid. Then in your BAV model's esteem, you are relating to brand associations in your CBVE pyramid. In relevance, you're then looking at how strong those associations would be. Then in the BAV's energy and differentiation categories, you're looking at how favorably they view the product and how unique the product is to the customer. So you'll notice how most of the theory that we've looked at throughout the syllabus interrelate to each other. And if you can pinpoint those interrelation aspects, it often helps you to be able to explain each of the elements in a little bit more detail because you can relate it to additional theory concepts. And then this is just another summary of the elements of the brain. And that brings us to the revision questions for Chapter 9. So Chapter 9 is quite an important chapter. It does come up quite often in the exams, and it is important that you're able to apply the theory to your case study exam. Does anyone have any questions on our Chapter 9, particularly quantitative research methods? Looks like not. So we can continue then with Chapter 12. So this is study unit 8. And it is relating to Chapter 12 in your textbook. Chapter 12 is quite an interesting chapter because it looks at brand extension. So we said earlier, if you have a strong, powerful, a well-known brand, then why not use or leverage, our branded word, the power of that brand to apply it to new products that you would introduce into the market so that they can benefit from all of the positive associations that are already developed for that brand name. When a firm uses an established brand name to introduce a new product, there are two main types of extension choices they have. They can use a line extension, where you are introducing a brand within the same product category. For example, when Coca-Cola offers a different flavor. Or you can have a category extension, which is where you introduce a product into a completely new product category. An example would be Coca-Cola selling Coca-Cola flavored lip ice, for example. Not the same product category at all, but it is still using the same brand name or leveraging that brand name. We also get 4 different forms of category extension. We can shift the form of the product, where we change the way that it's delivered. For example, you could offer people Coke in a can, or you could offer them the syrup and they could take it home and mix it themselves. You also have a leverage of special expertise, where the brand is seen as an expert. So any extension that they make, they're seen as an expert in that particular field. You can also use it to sell companion products. The best example is where you have shampoo and conditioner made by the same company. They go together. And you can also use it to leverage your customer base, where you try to get a little bit more out of the customers that you've already developed a good relationship. Why would we use a brand extension? There are a number of advantages that are given to us in the textbook and the learning guide. These are, it improves our brand image, it reduces the perceived risk with customers, it increases the probability of gaining distribution, and also increases the chances of customers trying out the product. It can increase the efficiency of our promotional expenditure, reduce the risks of introducing our product and our follow-up programs. It can help us avoid the cost of developing a new brand because we have a perfectly good one that we can utilize. It will also allow us for some economies of scale in terms of packaging and labeling because we're going to use common factors. And it also allows our customers to stick with the brand that they like while seeking variety. If you think about Coke has the different cola drinks as well as flavor drinks like Fanta and Spoletta, and then they have the neutral Sprite as well. A few more advantages is that we get positive feedback benefits to the parent brand. The extension actually increases the equity of the parent brand through increased awareness, additional exposure, and improving the brand image. It can also clarify the brand meaning, enhance the parent brand image, bring new customers to the brand, revitalize a brand that may have eroded according to the BAE model, and add an additional element of differentiation. And it may even permit subsequent extensions under that particular brand extension. But as we've learned in marketing, nothing only has advantages. You may have a few disadvantages when it comes to brand extensions. Too many extensions may confuse or frustrate the consumer, which we call brand dilution. You may encounter retailer resistance. They may not want your brand taking up all of their shelf space. It can fail and then hurt the parent brand. We may find that it succeeds and actually cannibalizes sales of the original brand, meaning we don't get new sales, we just have the new brand stealing the customers from the old brand. It can succeed but diminish identification with any one category, again a form of brand dilution. It can be a successful brand and still actually hurt the parent's brand image. It may dilute our brand meaning, and it can cause the company to lose out on the opportunity of building a second strong, well-known brand that has a lot of brand equity. Now, when we are creating brand extensions, there are a few managerial assumptions that are made. Managers sometimes assume that customers have an awareness of the original brand and positive associations with it, which should be researched. They also assume that the positive associations from the original brand will be linked to the new brand. They also hope that negative associations will not be transferred. And they also hope that the new brand extension doesn't create any negative associations for the parent brand. And all of these things are very important that we research them through all of the different systems that we learned about in the previous chapter. Now, when we are creating an extension, we would like that extension to develop its own equity. We don't want it to rely purely on the equity of the parent brand. And how is it going to do this? We need to look at salience. Hopefully the parent brand has some awareness. Very similar to a celebrity endorser. There's no point in me using a brand if my target market or the new target market for the extension is not aware of it. Also looking at favorability, hopefully the parent brand is viewed favorably by the target market for the extension. And in terms of uniqueness, hopefully the differentiation that the parent original brand has is also transferred to the extension. When we consider whether an extension is going to add to the equity of a parent brand, we need to look for compelling evidence that there will be a transfer of positive association. We also need to make sure that the two brands are relevant to each other, so that there will be some link between the benefits or attributes of the parent brand and the extension. We would also hope that the extension is in some way consistent with the original brand, so that we don't end up with brand dilution. And we would also hope that you have strong positive associations that will transfer from the parent brand to the extension and from the extension back to the parent. If we are going to introduce a brand extension, we would want it to be successful. And there are 4 characteristics of a successful brand extension. They create their own points of parity and points of difference. They recognize and respond correctly to competitive reactions. They also enhance the points of parity and points of difference for the parent brand. And they have as many of the advantages of an extension as possible and as few of the disadvantages of an extension as possible. Your textbook gives you quite a long list of examples of product extensions that have been successful and product extensions that have been unsuccessful. And it's interesting to read as an example, and it also just adds some insight into how important it is that extensions are actually relevant. When we are thinking of pursuing a brand extension opportunity, we obviously, just like any other business strategy, are going to evaluate whether or not we want to pursue our brand extension opportunity. And the way that we do that is to, as we looked at in chapter 6, identify current customer knowledge and then identify the desired customer knowledge that we want them to have about the brand. We will also identify possible candidates for an extension, and then we would obviously evaluate those candidates and choose the candidates that are most likely to have a large number of advantages and very few of the disadvantages. And also a candidate that is just relevant and consistent with our original brand. We have to make sure that we are able to design good marketing programs to launch our extension. And remember, our focus is always on integrated marketing communications, that we'll be able to get a good mix of elements that will be appropriate for our brand and appropriate for our target market. And then we would always evaluate, after we've launched the extension, the effects that it has had on the parent brand's equity. A good brand extension will enhance the parent brand's equity. A poor brand extension will have a negative impact. And then you would need to consider whether it is valuable to keep that extension. When are brand extensions appropriate then? They are appropriate if there is some similarity between the extension and the parent. They are appropriate if it would be to the company's disadvantage to not exploit or take advantage of the current knowledge and perceptions that customers have of the parent brand. And often, the marketers focus only on one brand association and ignore the fact that an extension could actually increase the number of brand associations, which would increase the amount of brand awareness and brand knowledge that customers have about a brand, which would ultimately increase our brand. If you guys are thinking of working on an application-based concept to apply all of this theory, the best example that we have to use is Coca-Cola. If we look at all of their different extensions, they fit into both line and category extensions. We can evaluate each different product in terms of advantages and disadvantages, as the different brands do bring different things. We can look at customer evaluation, the effect on the parent brand, and we can also look at extensions that have been successful and those that are unsuccessful, and do a little analysis of why. So if you are looking for a good example to use to practice applying the theory of Chapter 12, Coca-Cola is definitely a good company to look at. And that then brings us to our revision questions for Chapter 12. Does anybody have any questions about brand extensions or anything that you would like further clarity on? Or have I overloaded everyone with content and now you've all gone brain dead? I hope not, because I want us to continue now and move on to chapter 14, if there are no further questions. And chapter 14 is looking at how are we going to make our brand global or international brand. So the focus is on managing our brand across different geographical boundaries and market segments. We only have 3 outcomes for this study unit 11, chapter 14 in your textbook. And here we need to understand the reasoning behind going global with our brands, the advantages and disadvantages of developing a global marketing program, and then defining the steps that we would follow in going global. So again, quite a narrow focus in terms of content, but the questioning would likely involve a lot of application. So to answer our first outcome, what are the reasons for us going global with our brand? The first thing is that often we feel like in our domestic market or our current market, there's slow growth or we've got too many competitors. So we're fighting for market share all the time, and we see global expansion as a way to get extra customers. We often have a belief that an overseas market has growth and profit opportunities for us. We may want to reduce costs through the application of economies of scale. Now, I'm sure by this point, everyone has learned and remembers what economies of scale means, but I will give a brief explanation of it again. Economies of scale means that the more you produce, the cheaper it becomes per unit. So it's a similar concept to buying in bulk. Because you are producing a greater quantity, it actually works out cheaper per item the more you produce. The fifth reason why we would want to consider a global marketing brand is the need to diversify our risk. Think about being a swimwear salesperson in South Africa. When the summer season ends, so do your sales. So that means that your product is very seasonal. So if you were to expand into countries that are in the northern hemisphere, when the South African summer ends, you would then still have a target market and potential sales in a market where people are going into summer. And the last reason why we would consider going global is because we recognize the fact that our customers are globally mobile. When your customer wants to eat a satisfying meal in another country, it is very satisfying to them to be able to go to a restaurant that they recognize or a chain that they recognize. Or the same thing if your customer is looking for, they've gone overseas for business and they need to buy body wash or shampoo or the perfume that they prefer, they are satisfied by the fact that they can find that brand in another market as well. So those are the 5 reasons why we would want to go global. The advantages of global branding are, as we said, economies of scale, lower marketing costs, because again, the cost is spread over a larger number of customers, increased power and scope in the market, because a global brand always has a stronger reputation, consistency in your brand image. Instead of changing the brand in every market you enter into, you present it consistently to everyone, and we know that consistency is important to brand equity. It also allows you to leverage good ideas. Instead of just using your good idea in one market for a limited number of customers, why not exploit or leverage that good idea internationally? And finally, it will give you a uniform set of marketing campaigns or programs. It means that in every market, again, you are presenting your brand in the same way, which increases consistency, which increases awareness, which leads to greater brand equity. So all of these things are building on one another. Again, however, for every advantage, there's a disadvantage. So the disadvantages of going global with your brand is that in some cases, our customers are very diverse and have different wants, needs, and preferences, and even perceptions. And that means that a single global brand may not suit everyone. We also have to remember that in some cases, we may have to change our product or our branding because in different markets, we have different competitors. And we would need different points of parity and points of difference. We may have a different legal environment, which may force us to make changes. We may be in an environment with different marketing institutions and different administrative procedures, which would make a single brand with a single marketing program difficult to implement. Why would we even consider standardizing an offering and having a single branded offering, single marketing program that we present to everyone? The main reason is because of the view that the world is shrinking. In other words, technology and telecommunications have allowed us to communicate easier and share information easier. So that means it is now becoming more reliable and cost effective for us to actually offer global brands to the market. Your learner guide gives you a breakdown of the difference between a localized marketing effort and a standardized. And basically, to summarize it, your local marketing efforts are going to be adapted to your local marketing needs. And you're going to give each market a customized product that is very well suited to that market. And your standardized global offering is the exact opposite. You try to produce one uniform marketing mix that you send out to the market with a single brand, a single product, and a single marketing communications program. Now, having looked at the local versus the global, we then get an interesting combination, which we call thinking global but acting local. And this is where you will use your global brand as the predominant feature in your marketing, but you will allow for some degree of tailoring to your product offering. A perfect example of this would be McDonald's. Their global brand is identical all over the world, and they do have a global presence, but they are also happy to make slight alterations to their menu to suit the local taste. When you are thinking of offering a global branding strategy, in order to build your brand equity, it is important that you are able to differentiate your marketing programs if they are required to meet different needs in different segments. And they give us a 7-step process in order to do this. They say firstly we should identify differences in consumer behavior, like how they purchase products or how they use the products. We should then adjust our branding appropriately. We should then choose the appropriate brand elements for that market. So remember our brand elements are things like URL, brand image, brand logo, slogan, jingle, all of those things. So we may keep the logo, but we might change our slogan for a different market. We should then understand the nature of our supporting marketing programs and the role our integrated marketing communications play in our branding as in a global setting. We should always leverage our secondary associations, understand how valid our original mental map is in terms of positioning in our new market. Is our brand as well recognized in that market, and does it have the same image in that market? And then if there are changes that need to be made to the mental map in terms of awareness and image, we would need to make those changes so we understand how to change the way that our brand is marketed for each particular market. Now, when we are looking at global marketing of our brand, we still are considering customer-based brand equity. And in order to do that, we are still focusing on the same building blocks and the same structure. We will start with establishing brand awareness globally. We will then move on to establishing points of difference and points of parity, or global meaning. We will then try and elicit positive brand responses. And finally, at the top of our customer-based brand equity pyramid, we will be trying to build global relationships so that our brand resonates with our customers on a global scale. And these are the 4 steps in brand building, which correlates once again to the 6 building blocks of your customer-based brand equity. So in order for us to build a global brand, we will create salience, develop brand performance, craft brand image, elicit brand responses, create brand feelings, and cultivate resonance, which again is correlating to the 6 building blocks within our customer-based brand equity. And that then brings us to the self-assessment or revision question for chapter 14. So again, like I said, narrow focus in content, but it is a very application-based case study. And again, a brand like Coca-Cola would be great for you to use as an example. They are also a brand that thinks global and acts local. And McDonald's, again, an awesome example. Does anyone have any questions about global branding? I think that it's actually something that we see and experience quite often. So we're probably quite familiar with global brands and how they increase their brand equity. Okay, so it looks like there aren't any questions. I hope that everyone has a thorough understanding of the 11 study units that we've gone over. And I feel that everyone's going to be very happy with the news that I give them about their final study unit, or chapter 15. Chapter 15 is a revision chapter. If you look at the title of 15, it is called Closing Observations. And basically this chapter summarizes everything that you have learned in the previous chapters. It's an amazing chapter for you at the end of your studying because it just gives you the opportunity to consolidate everything that you've learned over the last 11 chapters and just reaffirm that you've learned all of the important elements. If you have a look at your student pacer, the 4 criteria that you have are to summarize the customer-based brand equity framework, which you've learned throughout your syllabus, to discuss what makes a strong brand, which is concentrated on in chapter 1, study unit 1, but is also elaborated on throughout the syllabus, to identify the criteria for a brand report card, which is presented on page 555 in your textbook. It is basically a checklist that looks at your qualitative and quantitative measures of brand equity. And then finally, identify and explain your future brand priority. So it looks at where you would like to take your brand. Would you like to increase market share, increase equity, go global, all of those different aspects that you would consider about your brand. So that brings us to the end of our session. I have seen that it has been posted, but I just have to reiterate that this webinar will be available for download on your eLearn, probably within 3 days. I think let's be nice and look for it after the long weekend. I hope that everyone enjoyed this section. I hope that you have found it informative. Another few minutes in case anyone has any additional questions, but otherwise, good night and have a great evening. I do see a question asking if there are workshops that I'm in this weekend. There are none this weekend. Your third workshop will be held not for um, brand management at Hill. I do see another query asking if there are any guidelines to the exam papers. Unfortunately, it is I&M's policy to only issue